Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is Rabbi Levi Avtzon, and on the other screen right next to me is my sister Chanie, Mrs. Chanie Wolf. I know that, at least in the Linksfield community, most of my family has been introduced. You've met my parents and you've met most of my siblings. I think there's only 2 siblings you haven't met, and this is one of them. Chanie is the one closest to my age. Chanie is about 18 months younger than me. I know she looks 18 years younger than me, but or 18 decades younger than me. But thank God, we grew up. Definitely, we were close, very close siblings, and still are closest to me personally. And for me, it's a big privilege and an honor to be able to have Chanie, to be able to talk to the Linksfield community and to the wider community, and to share your thoughts about something which I believe has been a journey for you, and in a different way, a journey for me. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. So nice to meet your wonderful community in some way.
Okay, let's get into it. Feminism. So my first question would be, would you define feminism, at least in its purest form, as a Jewish value?
Okay, so I before answering that question, I want to share a little bit of my perspective in my journey on this topic. Maybe easier to I guess approach it from a personal place. So this is really a question I've struggled with myself in many ways. I think especially since I got married and became a mother. And it's kind of odd because you'd think like, I grew up, this was normal. I grew up in a religious community and I know what the role of a woman is, and it should seem so natural. And yet I found myself surprised by how uncomfortable I was, not intellectually, not philosophically, but emotionally with my place as a woman. And I think what happened is that I realized that I had grown up in a world where I felt somewhat accomplished in a masculine way. And I'm going to explain soon what I mean by that. But, I was used to doing my thing. I would go out. I was independent. I enjoyed learning. Have never been, I guess, the baby kind of person, although we both raised our younger siblings, many of them, but, it was never my thing. It's not like what I enjoyed. I wouldn't choose to spend time with little babies as a pastime. I enjoyed intellectual things. I enjoyed adult conversation. I enjoyed getting out and doing and accomplishing and teaching and making projects and making a school production and things like that. And, I really enjoyed these things. And when I first got married and found myself with hours of domestic work every day, like it's my responsibility to keep the house organized, to do the laundry, to do this, to do that, to cook and to clean and to whatever. And there was just all this like drudgery stuff. It was just stuff to do. I just like, I didn't know what to do with myself. And I kept feeling like I'm wasting my time. And then if that weren't challenging enough, I became a mother. Baruch Hashem, thank God, about 10 years ago. And I was shocked by how unprepared I was for the feeling of motherhood. Like I should have been the one who was a pro. Like, I have 10 younger siblings, thank God. I raised many of them. I knew how to do all the physical aspects of mothering really well. I had it all down to science. But emotionally, I remember looking at this newborn and I thought, okay, he's mine. Now what? What am I supposed to do with him? And, like I held him, I did the things, I fed him, he was colicky. I did whatever I needed to do. And I wasn't bonding. And I remember that looking back, it seems funny, but he was my first. And so long as he wasn't talking, I remember that I barely talked to him. I looked at him, I smiled, I cooed maybe a little bit. But the concept of like talking to a little baby who can't talk to you back, it was so weird to me. It was so unnatural. Like I really didn't fit into whatever I thought would be the stereotypical, mothering feeling, and that should come so naturally, and it wasn't working. And I kept going, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And it really took time until I recognized that I I was really used to a masculine side of myself. And it was a journey until I was able to tap into the feminine side, to appreciate it, to even see it in myself, to see myself as a mother, to see myself really as a woman. And so, from that place and, having come to really, thank God, a place of appreciation for that, I've really come a long way. I remember when I had my fourth baby and it was the middle of the night and she woke me up and I was like insanely tired. And I picked her up at some ridiculous hour and I just started yapping away to her. And like, it was almost like, thank you for waking me up, because I can't get enough of just bonding with you and chatting. And it was so weird. And I remember thinking, Chanie, what happened to you? So, as an introduction, I want to share that really, this is a personal topic for me. I understand the challenges. I understand the feelings that come up on this issue. And I want to share that I really, the things that I'm going to share, they're not an intellectual idea, but there's something that really I've found to be meaningful, relevant, and really, really true in a very personal way. So, okay, so you asked about feminism. So my experience with that has been that really the world has sold us a lie, and us, I include myself. There is a big lie out there, and the lie is feminism. And I like to share with my students, I teach in a seminary here, I say it's feminism versus femininity. The two words sound very similar. They couldn't be further apart. Feminism says men and women are equal. There's no difference. We're the same. We can do the same things. We should do the same things. Femininity is the understanding of the unique quality women have. And the lie about feminism is it's not true on any level. Of course, men and women are not the same. We're not the same physically, in our physical makeup, in our strength, in the way our bodies work. We're not the same emotionally in the way we react and the way we feel, the way we express our feelings, the way we deal with our feelings. We're not the same in the kind of biological experience that God gives us. Only women can have children. We're not the same intellectually. Men and women tend to think differently. I mean, they're on all levels, men and women are different. And so the idea of we need to say that we're the same in order to be equal, I found comes from a place of discomfort, where essentially we've all been convinced for thousands and thousands of years that the men are like the right way. It's good to be a man. Men are first class, and women need to try to be like men to be equal, to be worthwhile. And so all of feminism, I feel, is resulting from an inferiority complex. I'm not good enough if I'm a woman. So I need to try to be a man. I'm going to convince myself that I can be a man. I can do everything like a man. I'm no different than a man. And then I'm going to feel whole. And, on so many levels, it's not true. It's not going to happen. As opposed to femininity, which is the understanding that God created us, as the Torah says, Zachar u'nekeva bara otam. Hashem created male and female, because there are two dynamics, there are two forces needed in this world. It's like a brain and a heart, and you can't live with a brain without a heart, or a heart without a brain. And it's not a question of who's better or who's more powerful. They're both equally necessary and important, but they're just different.
Let me ask you, and interrupt at this moment. Would you say that you're talking about gender as biology, men and women, or are you talking about masculine and feminine? And if you are talking about masculine and feminine, how would you define that? What is masculine in your opinion? What's feminine?
That's an excellent question. So yes, I'm starting from a place of, men and women, but the real question is masculine and feminine, which is really what I want to get to. there are two energies, and I think we mix that up, and that tends to be the confusion. That when we say masculine and feminine, we think we're actually talking about what men must do and what women must do, and strict roles. That's not it. It's really two paradigms for life, and they play out in many ways. So there's the masculine paradigm, the masculine energy, and the feminine energy, and God created the world with both of them and needing both of them. The masculine is the energy that is the drive to accomplish, to do. It's more concrete. I need to build. I need to, I need to earn. The Torah tells us that when God sent Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, out of the Garden of Eden after their sin, life was no longer idyllic. It was no longer going to remain, you get whatever blessings you want for free. They walked around in the Garden of Eden and they had whatever they wanted, whatever they needed. It was no longer going to be paradise. They were now going to have to earn their blessings. And God said, you need to work for your living. He told Adam, you need to work by the sweat of your brow. You're going to earn your sustenance. So that drive to put aside the man. The masculine drive is the drive to earn, to build, to accomplish. I'm going to earn my living. I'm going to work for something. I'm going to build a building. I'm going to build a business. I'm going to earn a paycheck. I'm going to check off a list of tasks. I'm going to do this and accomplish that. I'm going to conquer. As God told Adam, go out and fill the world, mil'u et haaretz v'kibshuha, fill the world, fill the land and conquer it. Make a difference. Take the world that God created sort of raw, a lot of raw materials. And we're meant to take that world and lashevet yitzara, inhabit it, build on it, improve on it. Hence the concept tikkun olam comes from God gave us a raw world and expected us to complete it. The Torah tells us, Asher bara Elokim la'asot. Hashem created the world, la'asot, to do, with the intention that we should take it and do and build and accomplish and fix and perfect it to bring it to the place that it was intended. So all of that drive to do that, to conquer the world, to make it what it was meant to be, to inhabit it, to build the roads and the bridges and the buildings and the businesses and the agriculture and the technology, and just accomplish something. That's the masculine energy, to do. And there's the feminine energy of being. Who am I? It's less tangible. It's a sort of spiritual energy. It's inward. Who am I? Being. What mood am I in? What energy do I give off? Chava, Eve, the first woman, was named by Adam, her name, Chava, from the root chaya. It's related, the etymology is life. She was named life. She is the mother of life, not only because physically that's manifest as she can birth life, she's going to give birth to children, but because she's the nurturer. She's going to sustain the life that is. It's not about what she's going to build and do. It's that which is she's going to give life to. He may go out and bring the money, the paycheck. He may bring the wheat home, but she's going to turn that into a livable. She's going to make bread with it. She's going to create an environment at home. She's going to bring life into the world. She's going to sustain that life, grow that life within her, nurture it, and nurture everyone around her with her emotions. It's a less tangible thing. It's the sense of being and the impact that has on ourselves and those around us. So, in really simple terms, every human being has both. If a person didn't have masculine energy, they wouldn't do anything. They'd never accomplish anything. There would be no sense of like, I need to win, I need to do that, check off that task. But if we had no feminine energy, we could never really be in tune with ourselves, the intrapersonal and interpersonal skills, the soft skills, the connections with others, the self-awareness, relationships, all those fall into the feminine domain.
So would you say that on the most part, women have a bigger percentage of femininity, but obviously some masculinity, and on average, the average man has a higher percent. It's not black or white.
Absolutely. Every individual is unique. It says that just as there are no two faces alike, there are no two individuals alike, everyone has their own unique combination. It is certainly true that the majority of women have a larger percentage of feminine energy, and the majority of men have a larger percentage of masculine energy. And of course, that varies, but for that reason, it is natural to women to nurture children. It's much more within their nature. Relationship building skills, self-awareness, communication, all types of emotional awareness and intelligence. These are the domains that usually are stronger amongst women.
Let's get back to you. So you described your own journey as having to go and appreciate both styles, okay? So for a person like yourself that, admittedly, me and you used to tease each other that I'm a guy that has quite a strong feminine energy and you're a woman that has quite a strong masculine energy. When you find out that you can't get an aliyah, that you can't make kiddush, that so much of the ritual of Judaism is not in your domain, how does that make you feel?
That's a good question. So it's interesting. Those particular examples have really, they've never talked to me. They never bothered me in the slightest. I think because I grew up and it was just so obvious that they're so beside the point. They're so not it. Like, to be able to get an aliyah is so not what Judaism is about. It never even occurred to me to be jealous or resentful in any way, because I grew up with that kind of clarity that that's not where the heart of Judaism is. I did admittedly struggle on a practical level with I want to learn and I can learn and I definitely have learned, but now when I have a little baby, I can't get out and do what I'd like to do. I'm just kind of sort of stuck, if you will, with this wonderful baby that I love, but is, who's just taking and taking and taking this energy from me. And I'd like to accomplish something in the way, in the masculine sort of way. And I just can't practically do it. And my husband can pick up and he can leave and he can go to Minyan and to learn. And it's not a matter of he can get an aliyah there and the prestige of it, as much as he can accomplish that. And I'm just not being able to accomplish as much as I'd like to there. And it's just not, that's not fair. So that I relate to, but that's different from the sense of the importance is in the ability to get an aliyah, because I think it was very obvious to me it's not. I think it's always really resonated with me that it wouldn't be fair to say women have all the strengths, right? Men also have to have some strengths. There is some fairness here. There are certain qualities that are more natural to men, that are more masculine qualities. There's the positive of that. It's not just all negative. There are a lot of positive qualities to masculinity, and men have them. And there are positive qualities that are uniquely feminine. So just as it is more natural and stronger by women, the empathy, the relationship skills, the feelings are much stronger by women. They're much more intuitive. You can just sort of sense, I can sense something is up with this child. I don't know, right? I feel like they need this. The understanding, the ability to help others mediate, et cetera, et cetera. That's stronger by women, but for the same reason, it means that they are more subjective. I find it hard. I know, I hear a baby crying and it could be, whether it's because of sleep training or it's because, they just need a few minutes and they're going to settle themselves down. And for whatever reason, you need to leave them for a few minutes, or what you're dealing with is urgent and you must wait a few minutes till you get to them, whatever the case might be, right? Let's say it happens to be the baby's crying. My heart is being torn into pieces. There's no logic there. There's just but I can't let my baby cry. It's just really, really hard to separate. And for a man, as much as you can love your child, it's more natural to be able to say, okay, well, if we're sleep training, we're sleep training. We can wait 5 minutes to get, to go into the room, or they'll be okay. They're just throwing a tantrum. The 2-year-old is perfectly okay. They're just frustrated. I'm fine. I can block that out. It's much harder for women to do that. And again, that's a strength. If it were natural for women to be able to separate, she wouldn't be as good of a mother. But for the reason that the same thing, the same quality that allows her to be an effective nurturer makes it more challenging for her to be an objective judge, an objective, you know, I guess witness, anything in the system of law, where it's about what's right, not what feels right. And, we see in our world today so much confusion about that. Is it actually good? Is it actually right? Or does it feel good? It's easy to have rachmanut, compassion. Oh, the poor man, he's underprivileged or whatever. Is he a criminal? Or forget labels. Did he do a crime? Did he commit a crime? Did he do the wrong thing? Right? You need to be able to be objective and not just say, oh, poor thing. And it is much more the strength of men, given the way God created them, to be able to keep emotions aside and strictly apply the law without getting emotions involved. And so, in other words, where God gave certain territory more to the men to use their strengths to apply the law, God gave women, and I'll get to that soon, a fundamental role in Judaism, which uses their strength.
So let me ask you a simple question. Many women would say that men haven't done a great job in that role. The world's a mess.
That's true.
Politicians are idiots. Justice in America, for example, they just put everybody in prison. So in other words, they would say strongly that a woman's voice is lacking.
Absolutely.
Ask the question, would that be the same in Judaism? Like, why would you say that the woman's voice is not lacking in halakha, in Jewish law?
Okay, fantastic question. So, the whole idea here is, again, you're going back to a masculine paradigm the whole time, that the women need to also be able to share their voice, but in a masculine way, and that's basically beside the point, because no, a woman cannot be effective when she's doing things in a masculine way. Let's give an example, okay? So a woman realizes, let's take an example at home, a mother and a father. A woman realizes, there is something not going great with a particular child. Maybe the relationship between the father and a certain child is not so great. And she feels like, they've fallen into a negative pattern. The child is misbehaving. The father is not responding the right way. She just senses that. She's intuitive. She picks up something's going wrong. Because as a mother, she's able to feel like, the child just needs some more closeness. He just needs some more understanding or whatever. So she's like, I've got the feminine quality. I've got to teach my husband. He has to know this, right? So what's she going to do? She's going to go over to him and say, honey, you're doing this wrong. You are totally doing this wrong, okay? You need to stop screaming at this child. You need to stop bossing him around. You need to do da-da-da-da. Now, what she's done, instead of influencing her husband with a feminine touch, she has basically turned masculine on him. She's doing the same thing he's doing. Exactly the same thing he's doing. And that's why it doesn't work. The only way she's ever going to have an influence is by using her feminine touch. You can't give across a feminine message in a masculine way. She has to get her message across to him the same way, the same message that she wants him to ultimately get. And that is, perhaps she's going to, use her feminine wisdom to share, how about, Aaron, I think, here, I bought a new game. I think Aaron would love this. Would you like to play it with him? She might say, here, you know what? Would you like to take a walk with so-and-so? She might just sweetly suggest something. She's not going to assertively explain the right way to do it. She's going to gently nudge her husband in the right direction, which means the only way women can help the world, and it needs that help desperately, to get to the place it needs to get to a place of where femininity is actually respected and honored, and the world comes to see the truth for what it is by women doing it the feminine way. In other words, not by taking the men's role and the men's position, standing at the rabbi's pulpit and screaming at everybody or whatever, right? Not screaming, but lecturing, and she can do that. It's not like a woman can't give lectures, but the way she's going to have her influence is specifically through her unique role, through the home. There's a beautiful example that's brought by our sages about a man named On Ben Peles. On Ben Peles was part of the group that was being instigated by Korach. He was jealous in the desert of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, and felt that it was unfair, that he was taking the power for himself. He had this whole conspiracy theory. He essentially wanted to be the big shot himself and didn't realize that God had appointed Moses. And so On Ben Peles was part of this group, and he was supposed to be picked up by his buddies, and they were going to go and stage their protest. His wife, with her feminine intuition and wisdom, knew it's not good. They're doing the wrong thing. He's just going to bring trouble upon himself, his family. Don't do it. She didn't, to her credit, go up to him and say, you good for nothing. What do you think you're doing? You're going to get us all killed, whatever. She tapped into her feminine wisdom, took off her head covering, sat outside the door. She did something really daring, inappropriate in a way, essentially halachically inappropriate. And she sat there outside the door. And as soon as his buddies came, they saw a woman who wasn't dressed the way she was supposed to be dressed, and they ran away. And he slept through the whole thing. He never got picked up. His friends went, Korach and his buddies, unfortunately, did stage their revolution, and they were swallowed up by the earth. And her husband remained alive and well, and their family was saved. And our sages praise the wife of On Ben Peles. This is what our sages have always said, Chachmat Nashim Banta Beita, that the wisdom of a woman builds her home. She found a feminine way, not to make noise, not to give lectures, but to facilitate, to enable the right thing to happen. I thought of this recently when, as of course happens in a family with children, my children were having an argument. This one did this one to me, he, that, she, whatever. And the rule in our house is mommy and tati do not mix in. We do not judge and figure out who's right or wrong, because inevitably we're going to be wrong. The other kid just gets resentful. So we don't play judge. We just facilitate that you need to make shalom, we say. You need to make peace. You need to work it out. You need to compromise. So whatever it was, maybe one child is really absolutely wrong. So good to share your own feelings, So of course they came to me and they're like, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, it seems we have an argument here. It seems there's a fight. I don't know what happened. I need both of you to go upstairs and make shalom together. And it occurred to me that, the masculine way would be to say, I know it all. I'm the judge. Look at me. I can be the super all-important, all-knowledgeable, brilliant mother who's going to judge and say, let's hear your arguments. Let's hear your arguments. I'm going to be super intuitive and brilliant, and I'm going to figure out who's right, and I'm going to give out a judgment. That makes me look really important, super powerful, really prestigious. And guess what? I have now 2 children who are mad at each other, and at least one who's mad at me. So I look important. I haven't accomplished anything very good. As opposed to the feminine way, which I'm not going to be a know-it-all. I'm not going to be the sage on the stage. I'm going to be the guide on the side. I'm not going to be the one who comes out as the rabbanit. I'm not the judge. I am not going to get any certificate of brilliance. All I did was enable. I facilitated that they should use their own wisdom and communicate. And what do I have now? 2 children who have learned the art of communication, who have compromised or who have understood each other. One apologized, the other explained their feelings. They've made peace. They're happy. They're both feeling loved, and no one's angry at me. And many good things have happened, and I didn't do anything. And that's really the concept.
Well, I'll ask you a personal question. I'll just go a little personal. Sure. I still want to talk about feminism and age of Corona. Whatever, without boasting, you're a very clever person, okay? Chances are you have one of the most highest IQ in the family. So
thank you.
they knew what you knew. So you don't feel shortchanged in any way that you can't get up on the pulpit, that you can't be at the forefront of Jewish conversation. I mean, you are running a center, but it's only for women, and your voice, on the most part, I think this is one of the first times actually talking to both men and women. Like, don't you feel that you change just by gender?
Wow, that is a loaded question. So, here's the truth. There is no question there are times where I'd love to make, it's not a matter of like, in the community, why don't I get to talk to this one or that one? As much as, if the masculine drive is the feeling of I want to accomplish, there are times that I feel like I can't really accomplish as much as I'd like to. There aren't enough hours in the day. Why am I doing this or that? That's not allowing me to really use my potential. And I've really, personally, I've come to realize the following. For example, and first of all, let me put it out there. I do feel like I teach. I'm part of the Hanhala, the managing of I'm part of the team that runs the seminary here, and I definitely feel like I get to accomplish a lot. I write, and I don't know who ends up reading the articles, women, men, whatever. Like I definitely have my opportunities to accomplish in the masculine way. But to your point, something which really resonates is that there was a time where I really didn't find it in me to invest in making Shabbat. Hosting Shabbat meals. I did the minimum. We're not big eaters. I cooked whatever we were going to eat ourselves. We were a small family. And I figured, like, the effort, the hours that it would take to invest in just cooking and baking and this and that and creating a whole fancy Shabbat dinner, which was really a huge investment of time. I looked at it and I said, I could teach 4 classes in that time. I could write an article. I could do this or that. I don't need to be cooking food. It just didn't feel like it was using my potential. And I justified it as like, I'm not great at hosting. I don't host a lot of guests, but I do this and I do that, and not everyone could do everything and whatever. And I kind of answered myself. And in recent years, it's become apparent to me. I started realizing that the influence that one can have in the feminine way is really unmatched by anything else. So in a very, very specific example, one of the courses that I teach at my seminary is chinuch, education, Jewish education of children. And it occurred to me at one point that I'm standing there and I'm lecturing and I'm talking about education, but the rule is show, don't tell. A picture is worth 1,000 words. What is a real experience of being in a home with growing Jewish children? That's like, how do you compare that to any lectures or articles? And I started noticing that if I could invite a student to one Shabbat dinner with our family, and it's not like I think we're unique. We're just, I hope, a normal Jewish family raising Jewish children, but that they could see what I'm talking about. And they could experience that, yes, what I told you in class, it's real. Here are these young children, look at how passionate they are about their Judaism. Look at, their how they're sitting so beautifully at the table and interacting with each other, or the words of Torah that they're sharing, whatever it is, that they get to experience that they get to see, and I'm talking about the role of women, and they actually see me holding a baby as opposed to lecturing about it, that it's just a whole different story. And I might feel like, what did I do? I just cooked some food, I served it, and I made small talk. And that felt like, I'm wasting my time, but then I just started realizing that really I was having, in a sort of intangible way, a much deeper impact than anything else I was doing. And so, it's really, I feel like my journey is really all of our journeys. We're all on a journey of going from a place of assuming that accomplishment and effect and importance and, impact is all measured in masculine ways, to ultimately coming to the truth and realize that the things that are real, the things that are important, can never be measured. How do you measure that you raised good children? That can't be quantified in any sort of term. And, I think all of the questions fall into that, where we really all need to learn to get past what we assume is impactful, what we assume to be, I want to change the world. Lots of people want to change the world. The way you change the world is by changing yourself, by building a healthier relationship with your own spouse or child, one at a time, one person at a time, real impact.
So let me ask you, so now we're in the Corona era. Would you say that throughout history, women played the role of femininity? In other words, you were saying that the woman brings the thing, a woman has always been feminine on the most part. So has anything changed other than our perception? Has anything actually changed in reality? And we're told that Mashiach comes will be a feminine energy. What does that actually mean? In other words, what is changing? Is it perception or is it reality?
That is an interesting question. I think it's both. I mean, obviously, the truth is that it's really always about perception because, you know, the truth has always been the truth. But facts on the ground are definitely changing, and those facts make it easier for us to perceive things correctly. You know, and one of the first things that struck me during the Corona era, you know, as soon as a little bit of the shock wore off, a tremendous amount of trauma and pain, you know, and it's far from funny. I mean, I'm living here in Crown Heights, and the pain and the tragedy, the trauma that's been going on here. I mean, it's just been completely horrendous. You know, I thank God every day that my family and I are healthy. You know, I was quite ill with Corona for a while, as were my husband and children, and pretty much everyone around here that I know. You know, and I really thank God every day that we've come out okay and didn't even need the hospital. So it's really, you know, it's an incredible blessing. And I'm not making light of, you know, Corona has really been a huge, painful challenge that we've been given. And yet within that, one of the first things that I noticed is the incredible change that is taking place in the world, where for the first time ever in history, it has become an official way of life, that life is about the home. And this has always been true in Torah. Torah has always recognized that it's about the women. And that's actually why, coming to Shavuot, God told Moses, Ko tomar lebet Yaakov. You know, when he was giving them the Torah, he said, this is, so shall you say to the house of Jacob, and that refers to the women, and so you shall, and so you shall speak to the Bnei Israel, to the sons of Israel, to the men. That first Moses was instructed to teach the women, to talk to the women about Torah and the transmission of Torah, and only then to the men. The women were spoken to first because their role, God was telling Moses, is really more fundamental to the continuity of Judaism. It's all going to be about the home. What happens in the home, the shalom bayit, the relationship between the husband and wife, and it's been said that chinuch, that the education of children, is 50% shalom bayit, 50% the parents' relationship, and 50% prayer. You know, that's a quip that, you know, I think rings, there's a lot of truth there. So the relationship of the parents, the education of the children, and so much of it is their emotional health, which is built in the earliest years. The core of our people is about who we are, what feelings we have. What is that? Not what does the child know about Shabbat? How do they feel about Shabbat? How they feel about Shabbat is ultimately going to bring them to want to know about Shabbat and do about Shabbat. But they can know all the rules. And if they have a bad taste and a negative feeling, and Shabbat was a stressful, horrible, boring day, that's a much bigger impediment than lack of knowledge. So the role of ensuring the continuity of Judaism through the feelings at home. How does Judaism feel? What is the experience of it? How is the living of it? Is so much more fundamental, and therefore God said, Moses, speak to the women first. And so, although Judaism is always recognized, and there's a beautiful, there's a letter from the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe that really talks to me a lot, and I share it with my students often, where he says, all that is holy and dear to the godly nation of Jews, to the Jewish people, has been given and entrusted to the Jewish women to guard and protect. And he lists 5 things, 5 fundamental areas of Jewish life without which everything would fall apart. And they are the overall feeling and management of the home, how the home is, you know, the mood of the home, the style of the home, which ultimately, you know, creates certain kinds of people, the upbringing of the children, the experience of Shabbat, the tahara, the purity of the family, the laws of family purity, and kashrut, and the kashrut of the food. All of these things, which are about not what do we do, who we are. They are what builds the future generations of Jews, who we become. All of that, says the previous Rebbe, have been entrusted to the women to protect. And, that's really the way Judaism has always seen it. There is a very important role for men, but the role of women is the underlying, foundation of everything. And today, for the first time during Corona, it's just become so obvious because all the synagogues closed, all the yeshivot have closed. And guess what? As painful, as challenging, as maybe a little bit demoralizing as it is, Judaism is still alive and flourishing. But imagine we would close down the Jewish home. Imagine we would, for 3 months, do lockdown of homes and say, we're doing kibbutz now. All families must dismantle. Men, you go to one location, women to another. Men, women, and children are not allowed to be near each other. They must social distance. And we just separated. And families were torn apart for 3 months, God forbid. Imagine that would happen. That would be the end of everything. And it's just so obvious to everybody. So long as the home is intact, so long as the home is a healthy, happy place, we'll be okay. We'll come out okay. And, the first Shabbat that my husband and sons couldn't go to the synagogue, my husband came home and he was a little confused and he looked around and said, okay, these 3 chairs at the corner of the table, this is our synagogue. We now have a shtibel, a little synagogue here at home. We will call it the Wolf Shtibel, and it is right here. And that's it. And for the past 2 months, that's been, and guess what? Nothing happened. It was fine. It was a little sad. We missed lots of things. We missed the Torah. We missed many things. I have to say it was nice for me to finally be able to be in synagogue on Shabbat morning because we don't have the ability to get there with our little children here. So that's been nice. But, as much as it was sad, like it happened. And they davened, they prayed beautifully, and they sang, and they did the whole thing. And even my baby got to, every time they would sing, he would be jumping up and dancing, and everything was great. That continued to happen. Prayer happened, learning happened in very unusual ways. My children are learning through Zoom. We get to learn through Zoom. All kinds of good things can still happen in some other way, but there's no way to do virtual family. That you can't take away. You can't do virtual Jewish home. And for the first time, we're getting an opportunity to realize what really matters. What is really the most important role in Judaism? What is it all about? What is the most important role in life? It is the ability to nurture people, to build healthy and happy homes, families, and human beings. And when that's in place, everything else is going to settle.
Amazing. So wow. So the world is definitely appreciating feminine energy much more. The world is pretty much become feminized. Would you say that?
Absolutely.
Yes. And as a man.
Let me just interject for a second. It's not just this, it's really been a trajectory that's been going on for a while, where over the past several decades, feminine values have really become very popular. A world of imperialism has given way to a world of human rights. It's no longer popular to be an aggressor nation as it was for thousands of years. The values of the world today are peace, mediation. If you can say that you mediated as opposed to litigated, that's impressive. People value that. Kindness, giving, generosity. You're a wealthy person that you can give it away and help feed the poor in Central Africa. That's considered impressive. The world has already come a long way in very, very recent times towards embracing, self-help, emotional awareness and intelligence and relationship skills and all of that. I mean, what was once totally like, feminine stuff, is now really, the world considers that very valuable. So, I think this is really just, we're escalating what has been a trajectory of the last few decades already, leading to a point that the Torah tells us when Mashiach comes, Nekevat Sovev Gever, the feminine is going to supersede and override the masculine. And I think we've really been seeing this coming already.
And would you say that feminine will override masculine is the idea that once Mashiach comes, we don't have to accomplish anything? It's just about basking in glory? Is that?
I believe that's true. The Rambam says, Maimonides teaches us that there will be, how does he describe the time of Mashiach? At that time, there will be no war, no hunger, no war, no jealousy, no competition, right? No one's going to be competing to accomplish and do and be anything. Lo yeh esek, and there will be no occupation for the world other than ladat et Hashem bilvad, to know God, to know. The Torah tells us that Adam knew Eve. Adam yadat chava, he knew Eve. That is, it's a description of relationship. We will strictly be engaged in developing an ever deeper and ever more meaningful relationship with God. That's what it's all going to be about. It's not about going to be about, the world will have been completed, finally. And there won't be anything to do. We're just going to develop and nurture a deeper and deeper shalom bayit with God. And that's really what it's about. Who will we be? How will be our understanding and connection and relationship with God? Not anymore, what we can accomplish. Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question. As a woman, you're a daughter, you have 6 brothers, obviously father, husband, sons. What role do you see for the men play in your life and in Judaism? Because
what role do I see them in general
I've always
supposed to be playing?
I found it very interesting that we often talk about like women in Judaism, but no one ever talks about men in Judaism. And why I find that fun is because, obviously people say, of course, men have a role in Judaism, but that itself is a very condescending statement towards women. Like the fact, men definitely have a role, women don't. But it's not so clear to me. In other words, and like TED, I'm a big TEDster. There's TED Women. They have a special conference every year, TED Women. There's no such a thing as TED Men. Okay, and I'm like, 1 second, what are men issues? Like everyone talks about woman issues. What are men issues? So my question to you would be, from a woman's perspective, what role do you see that the men in your life play?
That is such an interesting question. First of all, let me say that, I have that question too. And I think these days we have it more than anyone else. It's like, especially now in the age of Corona, like, what is the place of men? Are they just second-class women, trying to help out at home? And that's definitely an interesting question. And it's funny that people don't ask it, or maybe they do. The truth is that, when people say to me, like, don't you feel jealous that you can't get an aliyah to the Torah or whatever? I think, like, I wonder if I've ever heard a man say, it's not fair that I don't get the ability to create life, to bring life into this world. Really, honestly, it's absurd that men aren't even jealous. Here, God took the godly power of creation, what the mystics call yesh me'ayin, something from nothing, literally. We're not talking about taking wood from a tree and building a table, something from nothing, creating life from nowhere, bringing life into the world. And any woman can just, it can resonate, the experience of giving birth to a child. There's just nothing like it. It's incredible. It's godly. It's literally godly. God gave that godly power only to women. I mean, yes, men have a role in that, right? But like the primary role in being able to appreciate that is the women's privilege. And I've never heard men complaining that it's not fair. It's fascinating, and that itself tells us so much about, we've been so brainwashed by the masculine world that no matter how valuable something is, if it's feminine, it's not actually important. You're not missing out. You're only missing out if it's something men have. And so that's, I think, part of the process is us getting to realize, like, hold on, what do we consider important? Why don't we actually, and I think we're getting there. We're going to get to a place where men have to ask themselves, they should be somewhat jealous, right? Looking for the feminine. So, putting that aside, what is the role of men? Obviously, God created men and women for a reason. And now that we've asserted that somehow the very fact that there's always been a question, what is the woman's role, right? That's part of the problem. Right, like I said, right. The part of the problem is that we ask the question. It should never even be a question, but of course that would be an ideal world where it's just so obvious, and the question would be reversed. But what is the role of men? Of course, things need to be accomplished. Things need to be done. There needs to be outward leadership and inspiration. And so, on a global level, and the whole world together, there's no question that God needs the masculine energy. We do need to fix this world, build this world, accomplish things. It's not only about the feeling and being and doing. I mean, even in a home, for example, I could say, listen, the part of mothering that talks to me is mommy time. So the kind of mother, I'm going to do the real thing. I'm going to do quality time. I'm just going to be a mother when it comes to, 8 o'clock at night when the kids are in their pajamas and I'm going to sit there and spend quality time with each child. That's the real deal of mothering. I'm just going to do that. The other stuff, hello, it's petty. It's just stuff. I mean, very funny, right? Like, you're not going to get to that quality time if there wasn't, supper, laundry, cleaning, whatever. There isn't that organized home. All the things weren't done to create the space for it. Shabbat is not about cooking food. Shabbat is about the transcendent experience of connection to each other and to God that is experienced on this holy day. But you can only get there, as our sages say, Mishatarach B'erev Shabbat, he who labored, did all the work to prepare for Shabbat will enjoy Shabbat. You can only get to the experience, to the being after the doing. And that is why Shabbat comes after 6 days of doing. Of course you need the doing. If you didn't do the work, you don't get to the experience. And we're taught that we create a world of redemption. It's not given to us for free. We need to build it. We spend, just as the 6 days lead to the 7th day Shabbat, the 7th millennium, which is the millennium, and it can start even earlier, but the millennium that will be the millennium of eternal Shabbat, the time of redemption and connection to the divine, is going to be preceded by and prepared for by the 6 millennia of hard work. And that's the masculine side. So the men have been given the role to take more of the lead in the practical doing that sets the stage for making the world the kind of place where we can ultimately just experience God. And they need to do that role. And there are parts of that women need to do as well.
Okay, so my question, because I know we have to wrap up in a few minutes. When God is referred to as he, does that bother you?
It's interesting. It never has bothered me personally, although I've wondered why it is so. But I do know the answer is that God is neither he nor she. And, the fact that God is referred to as he is really just similar to all the other, the fact that much of the world is created and run in masculine ways. God is above and beyond he or she. He's not masculine or feminine. He's both. He creates both. But God relates to us and to the world in masculine ways and in feminine ways. And therefore, we also talk about God as the Shekhinah, the holy presence, which is feminine. So God has both and expresses both. And in most of the areas in which we're talking about God, we're talking about the masculine expression of him. So it's not that he's masculine. We're talking about God as he instructs us in the Torah. That's the masculine expression of God, as it were.
I'm going to fire a few questions at you, short answers.
Okay.
Anything in Judaism, sometimes the Talmud, etc., that comes across a bit chauvinistic, patronizing to women? Or do you read something else into it? How do you deal with it when you find that kind of thing?
I really feel so fortunate that I was raised with Chassidut, I have to say. I mean, I don't know what I would do if I was not. Chassidut is the inner dimension of Torah, the deeper, the feminine, as it were, the feminine aspect of Torah. And I think as a woman, if I only knew the masculine aspect of Torah or the masculine understanding of it, without Chassidut, without the soul of it, I probably would be very bothered. And since I was fortunate enough to be raised with the Chassidut, the Kabbalah, with the real understanding of what Torah is ultimately teaching us, I never even had the opportunity really to be bothered by these questions because I almost knew the answer before I had the question. So, to share for the benefit of, those who haven't had that experience, yes, there are things that on the surface, if you will, in the masculine reading, right, in the surface reading seem chauvinistic, like, nashim datan kalot, that women have lighter dat, or the blessing that we make shelo sani isha, that he didn't make me a woman, et cetera, that would seem to be very patronizing and chauvinistic. But when you understand, what it's really saying, two things. Number one, there is a certain element of some things that are reflecting reality, which means men need to practically, in halakha, thank God for making them a man because they live in a world where the masculine is valued. And halakha responds to reality. If that's the world you live in and that's the way you feel, and I'm not going to get into, multiple other examples that are outside of this realm where we see the same thing, halakha deals with lashon bnei adam, with human beings as they are. And we live in a world where the masculine is more dominant. And so men need to thank God that they get to have, that easier role, as it were, or maybe a more prominent role or whatever. But that doesn't mean that's the truth of the way it's meant to be and the truth that, that is. That's just the reality now. So that's one aspect, that's the galut reality. But a second aspect is really who said it's even, when we say, for example, women have lighter dot, you can read that as they're stupid, or you can recognize that the same Torah also tells us, the same Talmud says, Bina Yitera, extra Bina has been given to women. So clearly it's not a contradiction. We're just saying that men and women have different strengths. One is greater at Bina, one is greater at Dat, or you can even understand that term differently. It's not about better or worse. For every one quote, you find another quote. You find Chachmat Nashim Benta Beita, right? You find so many other terms and clearly realize there's something a lot more nuanced. That we're not about competition of who's better as much as the Talmud is not looking to be politically correct. It's telling us the truth. Each one has their own individual strengths.
So, some women, instead of saying Shelo Asani Isha, which men say, they'll say She'asani Kirtzana. I don't believe you say that, do you?
I don't say it. It's not our tradition.
Okay, and how do you feel about that? In other words?
Again, so long as men are going to say Shelo Asani Isha, for the same reason, there are women who say, he made me as his will. That's all reflecting. It's hard. I will admit it's hard. Women have a challenge that it is much harder to feel spiritual. And, honestly, my husband experiencing what really was a feminine Judaism over the last period of time was starting to feel it also. And he was like, wow, this is hard. It's a much harder, much more difficult, much more challenging calling in the service of God to serve him in a feminine way where you don't even get the satisfaction much of the time of feeling spiritual. It's harder. And women get credit for that. And there's no question, I don't mean to be, judgmental, but there's no question that if men had the feminine role, they would really struggle. Okay, God gave women the feminine strengths that allow them to find the spirituality and the meaning, even in what can be very, very challenging at times. It's much easier to feel connected. I've had a much easier time feeling connected to God when I was able to go to Shabbat services every morning and learn as much as I wanted and whatever. To be able to struggle to feel connected to God and in prayer, while you're tending to young children, and through the various tasks that are involved in running a home and being a mother, it's much deeper, it's much harder, it is much more challenging. And we need to recognize that. And that's not about inferior, it's about a lofty calling that requires a tremendous amount of depth and understanding and connection. And yes, it is totally understandable that men say, thank you, God, for giving me the easier one. It's not better, but it's certainly easier. Serving God, finding God in the role of a woman is a tremendous calling. It's really actually the calling. And I want to, maybe conclude with this. A teaching that has always inspired me from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that we say that in the merit of righteous women, our ancestors were redeemed from Egypt, and in the merit of righteous women, we will be redeemed. Why? And the Rebbe explains that the Avodat Hashem, the service of God, that is unique to women specifically, is much more connected to the Avodah, to the kind of service of God that is expressed in redemption. And that is what we call Dira B'Tachtonim, a dwelling place below in this earthly realm. To leave the world, to leave the material constraints and find God in the spiritual pursuit of prayer and learning Torah is natural. It's easy to feel spiritual that way. To find God in the things that, for example, the three unique mitzvot that have been given to women are Shabbat, Kashrut, and Taharat HaMishpacha, right? Shabbat, creating an atmosphere of Shabbat, which involves a lot of physical preparation and action and cooking, whatever. Kashrut, right? Ensuring that the food is kasher, dealing with the food. And Taharat HaMishpacha, bringing holiness and purity, the Shekhinah, into the home through her observance of Tahara, which again is very technical, and focused on the material and on her own body. So the woman is dealing with the physical most of the time, and her role is to find God in every physical detail of her home, of her own self, every aspect of life, as opposed to escaping from life. And ultimately, that's what Geula, that is what redemption is about. It's hard. It's very challenging. But when we're able to help the world get out of this shift of imagining that spirituality is escaping the universe to stand on a hilltop and meditate, but rather God is in every detail of life. God is in, is in our eating and our sleeping, in our marital relationship, in our business. It's all about God. And the question is always, how can I serve God with and through this medium? When we get to that place as a world, we will have created a world of Geulah. And I find it an incredible vote of confidence that, that's really humbling, because I feel like I'm not up to the task that God has said to women, even as we are in a world of galut, even as we are in a world of falsehood where the masculine dominates, I trust that you can focus on making a dira b'tachtonim, finding God in the physical, and not get lost in it. And not only that, but you can pull the men along and inspire them to recognize that God is really in all the details.
Wow. Okay, we ran out of time, and now you're going to go do feminine stuff like taking care of the family. I just want to say, wow, I've heard many speeches about gender in Judaism, but there's many insights I heard today that I've never heard before. It's actually given me personally a lot of stuff to think about, the role of man and the role of woman. And all I could say is, as a big brother, I'm bursting up pride. So thank you. That was incredible, and I look forward that maybe you'll be talking to the community again sometime on a different topic. I really appreciate it.
Bezrat Hashem, may it be in Yerushalayim with Mashiach. May we receive the Torah the way we really want to from God Himself, the revelation, this Shavuot. And thank you so much for this opportunity to, I don't get to see your community, but, I feel connected, and I've heard wonderful things about your community. So, really honored and privileged. Thank you for the opportunity. May we have a happy Shavuot, and the blessing we give each other is Kabbalat Torah. May we receive the Torah b'simcha u'b'pnimiyut. May we receive the Torah as women, in other words. May we get to receive the Torah with joy and with inwardness.
God bless.
Thank you.